472, Chapter 117 of the Count of Monte Cristo. Book Talk begins at 7:17.
Welcome to Craftlit, the podcast for crafters who love books. My name is Heather Ordover, and I'm podcasting from where the Delaware River meets the Old York Road, New Hope, Pennsylvania. Episode 472, Wait, Hope. This episode of Craftlit is brought to you by its listeners. Many thanks and much gratefulness to all of the listeners who have gone over to patreon.com/craftlit and pledged their support to the show. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you. Well, hello! Welcome to the final chapter of the Count of Monte Cristo. It's only been 70 episodes. I don't know why it feels like it's been a long time. Wow. Thank you for sticking with it. Thank you for listening all the way through. I am so excited to be bringing you our final chapters in just a moment. But first, many of you have gone and done the little polly thing and let me know what books you are interested in reading next. As of now, it is looking like Anne of Green Gables is in the lead for our regular Craftlit book, and A Room with a View is in the lead for the premium book, followed hard on by The Importance of Being Earnest. And that's good because it's going to take me some time to get a good version recorded for old Ernest there. It's a particularly tricky play to do, and luckily we know some particularly awesome actors. So there's that. And just to remind you, before I launch into another big book, I'm going to be doing some short stories, and that'll probably take us through Halloween through Christmas, doing shorts and small things, which will give me time to prep for both Anne and A Room with a View. If you live near or have traveled to Prince Edward's Island, where Anne of Green Gables takes place, please contact me, heather@craftlit.com. I would love to talk to you, maybe even on audio, and get some stories from you, because there's no question that the location has a lot to do with the tone of the book and the setup. And it is also a very unique location. So that was something I wanted to ask. At some point, obviously, we will be doing Anne of Green Gables, even if it doesn't win the polling. But I am going to leave the polling open until after Count of Monte Cristo is finished, so we give a chance for everybody to kind of catch up, because we have a lot of people who've been hoarding episodes and will binge, I'm sure, when we are complete after today. For our little bit about Scotland today, I told you last week that I would be saving Stirling Castle for today's episode, and I actually am going to embed a couple of videos onto craftlit.com/472, just because one of the videos is of a tour guide at the castle, kind of walking you around and showing you stuff. And it's beautiful and impressive, but the guys there are also really hilarious. So it's both fun to watch and also beautiful. And right now, I'm thinking beautiful, fun things, especially of a historical nature, are rather soothing. So that is provided for you at craftlit.com/472. There is also another video for you that I'm putting up there, and I'll see if I can link to it on Facebook as well. This is a video that Dianne, our tour leader, actually made of a part of Edinburgh where she was a month ago. She took several chunks of video for us and did some sharing from her last Scotland/Northern Ireland trip. And that's always a lot of fun, because Dianne knows how to have a good time. Now, if you are not a Scottish history or a Scotland aficionado in general, but you find yourself strangely compelled to say, I know something about Stirling Castle, it might be that you're remembering Stirling Bridge. And that's because in the 13th century, there was a guy named William Wallace, also known as William Wallace. William Wallace was the main character in Mel Gibson's movie Braveheart. And he did some serious damage to the English army at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Stirling Bridge is near where Stirling Castle is, not surprisingly. Stirling Castle dates way back. It is a very old castle, and it is in great shape. In fact, watching the grounds as the tour guide takes you around on the video that I'm embedding, it reminded me a lot more of the Tower of London in that it's a complex of buildings, and you can see the workingness of it, you know, how everything worked out, where people did what they did, and how society, you know, without electricity or machinery really would have functioned back then. And those kinds of historical preserves are always the ones that I find just so much fun to visit. So I'm very excited about that. There's also some aerial drone footage that someone posted on YouTube of the William Wallace Monument, which is a giant tower, and it is stunning. It's just so beautiful. The architecture alone of the tower is amazing, and it's on the top of Abbey Craig. It's got this fantastic view, and of course the drone footage can get way high up, so it gets high enough in the sky that the earth starts to curve, which is just kind of cool. So you get a really, really nice view of the surrounding area. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world. So again, if you are interested in going on the Craftlit Scotland tour in 2018, please, please, please call soon. Call Dianne at 1-800-826-2266. Even if Dianne doesn't answer the phone, just let them know you want to talk to her. And if she isn't there, somebody else at Holiday Travel will be able to help you with the details. All it takes to reserve your space is a $200 deposit, fully refundable before the deadline, and that way your space is reserved. Seriously, the numbers are rising, so I would move fast to reserve your space, even if you're not sure. But I really want you to go, so really be sure. And then I'll see you in Scotland. So videos for you to watch at craftlit.com/472. And that's pretty much it for the linky things, because there isn't a whole lot I need to tell you before we listen to our final chapter. The first is Bijou is the name of the watchmaker and the kind of watch that Danklár was wearing. I am so sorry. I completely mucked up the pronunciation of that last week. Bijou. And again, there are pictures of it at craftlit.com/471. That's from last week. The other thing is to let you know that when you hear a reference to Calypso and Telemachus, these are old mythology stories from around the time of the Odyssey. Telemachus is Odysseus' son. And there are several different versions of stories about Calypso and Telemachus, or Circe and Telemachus. That's her other name. And some of them involve how Odysseus dies. Some of them involve how Telemachus dies. Some of them contradict each other quite a bit. There's a whole bunch. So instead of telling you all the details about each of them, the important thing you need to know is when you hear this reference, what you need to hear in the back of your mind is Calypso saying to Telemachus, "Why don't you slip into something more comfortable?" And that's pretty much all you need to know. That communicates everything, I think. The other thing to keep in mind, as always with books that are, a couple hundred years old, social rules about marriage, as well as rules about marriage, were very different back then. And who made a good match for whom did not necessarily meet our, well, that's going to be a healthy relationship standards. It didn't mean that they were going to be unhealthy in the relationship back then. We are the ones who might have a problem with one piece of today's chapter. They didn't. And it's just good to remember that. All right. I'm not going to hold back anymore. We're going to listen now to chapter 117, the chapter I never thought I would be able to announce, of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas.
Chapter 117. The 5th of October. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. An opal-coloured light, through which an autumnal sun shed its golden rays, descended on the blue ocean. The heat of the day had gradually decreased, and a light breeze arose, seeming like the respiration of nature on awakening from the burning siesta of the south. A delicious zephyr played along the coasts of the Mediterranean, and wafted from shore to shore the sweet perfume of plants mingled with the fresh smell of the sea. A light yacht, chaste and elegant in its form, was gliding amidst the first dews of night over the immense lake extending from Gibraltar to the Dardanelles, and from Tunis to Venice. The vessel resembled a swan with its wings open towards the wind, gliding on the water. It advanced swiftly and gracefully, leaving behind it a glittering stretch of foam. By degrees the sun disappeared behind the western horizon, but as though to prove the truth of the fanciful ideas in heathen mythology, its indiscreet rays reappeared on the summit of every wave. As if the god of fire had just sunk upon the bosom of Amphitrite, who in vain endeavoured to hide her lover beneath her azure mantle. The yacht moved rapidly on, though there did not appear to be sufficient wind to ruffle the curls on the head of a young girl. Standing on the prow was a tall man of a dark complexion, who saw with dilating eyes that they were approaching a dark mass of land in the shape of a cone, which rose from the midst of the waves like the hat of a Catalan. "Is that Monte Cristo?" asked the traveller, to whose orders the yacht was for the time submitted, in a melancholy voice. "Yes, your Excellency," said the captain. "We have reached it." "We have reached it," repeated the traveller in an accent of indescribable sadness. Then he added in a low tone, "Yes, that is the haven." And then he again plunged into a train of thought, the character of which was better revealed by a sad smile than it would have been by tears. A few minutes afterwards a flash of light, which was extinguished instantly, was seen on the land, and the sound of firearms reached the yacht. "Your Excellency," said the captain, "that was the land signal. Will you answer yourself?" "What signal?" The captain pointed towards the island, up the side of which ascended a volume of smoke, increasing as it rose. "Ah, yes," he said, as if awaking from a dream. "Give it to me." The captain gave him a loaded carbine. The traveller slowly raised it and fired in the air. 10 minutes afterwards the sails were furled, and they cast anchor about 100 fathoms from the little harbour. The gig was already lowered, and in it were 4 oarsmen and a coxswain. The traveller descended, and instead of sitting down at the stern of the boat, which had been decorated with a blue carpet for his accommodation, stood up with his arms crossed. The rowers waited, their oars half lifted out of the water like birds drying their wings. "Give way," said the traveller. The 8 oars fell into the sea simultaneously, without splashing a drop of water, and the boat, yielding to the impulsion, glided forward. In an instant they found themselves in a little harbour formed in a natural creek. The boat grounded on the sand. "Will your Excellency be so good as to mount the shoulders of 2 of our men? They will carry you ashore." The young man answered this invitation with a gesture of indifference, and stepped out of the boat. The sea immediately rose to his waist. "Ah, your Excellency," murmured the pilot, "you should not have done so. Our master will scold us for it." The young man continued to advance, following the sailors, who chose a firm footing. 30 strides brought them to dry land. The young man stamped on the ground to shake off the wet, and looked around for some one to show him his road, for it was quite dark. Just as he turned, a hand rested on his shoulder, and a voice which made him shudder exclaimed, "Good evening, Maximilian. You are punctual. Thank you." "Ah, is it you, Count?" said the young man in an almost joyful accent, pressing Monte Cristo's hand with both his own. "Yes, you see I am as exact as you are. But you are dripping, my dear fellow. You must change your clothes. as Calypso said to Telemachus. Come, I have a habitation prepared for you in which you will soon forget fatigue and cold." Monte Cristo perceived that the young man had turned around indeed. Morrel saw with surprise that the men who had brought him had left without being paid or uttering a word. Already the sound of their oars might be heard as they returned to the yacht. "Oh, yes," said the Count. "You are looking for the sailors." "Yes, I paid them nothing, and yet they are gone." "Never mind that, Maximilian," said Monte Cristo, smiling. "I have made an agreement with the navy that the access to my island shall be free of all charge. Ha! I have made a bargain." Morrel looked at the Count with surprise. "Count," he said, "you are not the same here as in Paris." "How so?" "Here you laugh." The Count's brow became clouded. "You are right to recall me to myself, Maximilian," he said. "I was delighted to see you again, and forgot for the moment that all happiness is fleeting." "Oh, no, no, Count," cried Maximilian, seizing the Count's hands. "Pray laugh, be happy, and prove to me, by your indifference, that life is endurable to sufferers. Oh, how charitable, kind, and good you are! You affect this gaiety to inspire me with courage." "You are wrong, Morrel. I was really happy." "Then you forgot me. So much the better." "How so?" "Yes, for as the gladiator said to the Emperor when he entered the arena, 'He who is about to die salutes you.'" "Then you are not consoled?" asked the Count, surprised. "Oh!" exclaimed Morrel with a glance full of bitter reproach. "Do you think it possible that I could be?" "Listen," said the Count. "Do you understand the meaning of my words? You cannot take me for a commonplace man, a mere rattle, emitting a vague and senseless noise. When I ask you if you are consoled, I speak to you as a man for whom the human heart has no secrets. Well, Morrel, let us both examine the depths of your heart. Do you still feel the same feverish impatience of grief which made you start like a wounded lion? Have you still that devouring thirst which can only be appeased in the grave? Are you still actuated by the regret which drags the living to the pursuit of death? Or are you only suffering from the prostration of fatigue and the weariness of hope deferred? Has the loss of memory rendered it impossible for you to weep? Oh, my dear friend, if this be the case, if you can no longer weep, if your frozen heart be dead, if you put all your trust in God, then, Maximilian, you are consoled. Do not complain." "Count," said Morrel, in a firm and at the same time soft voice, "listen to me. As to a man whose thoughts are raised to heaven, though he remains on earth, I come to die in the arms of a friend. Certainly, there are people whom I love. I love my sister, Julie. I love her husband, Emmanuel, but I require a strong mind to smile on my last moments. My sister would be bathed in tears and fainting. I could not bear to see her suffer. Emmanuel would tear the weapon from my hand and alarm the house with his cries. You, Count, who are more than mortal, will, I am sure, lead me to death by a pleasant path, will you not?" "My friend," said the Count, "I have still one doubt. Are you weak enough to pride yourself upon your sufferings?" "No, indeed. I am calm," said Morrel, giving his hand to the Count. "My pulse does not beat slower or faster than usual. No, I feel that I have reached the goal, and I will go no farther. You told me to wait and hope. Do you know what you did, unfortunate adviser? I waited a month, or rather I suffered for a month. I did hope. Man is a poor wretched creature. I did hope, what I cannot tell, something wonderful, an absurdity, a miracle, of what nature he alone can tell who has mingled with our reason that folly we call hope. Yes, I did wait. Yes, I did hope, Count, and during this quarter of an hour we have been talking together, you have unconsciously wounded, tortured my heart, for every word you have uttered proved that there was no hope for me. Oh, Count, I shall sleep calmly, deliciously in the arms of death." Morrel uttered these words with an energy which made the Count shudder. "My friend," continued Morrel, "you named the 5th of October as the end of the period of waiting. To-day is the 5th of October." He took out his watch. "It is now 9 o'clock. I have yet 3 hours to live." "Be it so," said the Count. "Come." Morrel mechanically followed the Count, and they had entered the grotto before he perceived it. He felt a carpet under his feet. A door opened, perfumes surrounded him, and a brilliant light dazzled his eyes. Morrel hesitated to advance. He dreaded the enervating effect of all that he saw. Monte Cristo drew him in gently. "Why should we not spend the last 3 hours remaining to us of life, like those ancient Romans, who, when condemned by Nero, their emperor and heir, sat down at a table covered with flowers, and gently glided into death, amid the perfume of heliotropes and roses?" Morrel smiled. "As you please," he said. "Death is always death. That is forgetfulness, repose, exclusion from life, and therefore from grief." He sat down, and Monte Cristo placed himself opposite to him. They were in the marvellous dining-room before described, where the statues had baskets on their heads always filled with fruits and flowers. Morrel had looked carelessly around, and had probably noticed nothing. "Let us talk like men," he said, looking at the Count. "Go on." "Count," said Morrel, "you are the epitome of all human knowledge, and you seem like a being descended from a wiser and more advanced world than ours." "There is something true in what you say," said the Count, with that smile which made him so handsome. "I have descended from a planet called grief." "I believe all you tell me without questioning its meaning. For instance, you told me to live, and I did live. You told me to hope, and I almost did so. I am almost inclined to ask you, as though you had experienced death, is it painful to die?" Monte Cristo looked upon Morrel with indescribable tenderness. "Yes," he said, "yes, doubtless it is painful, if you violently break the outer covering which obstinately begs for life. If you plunge a dagger into your flesh, if you insinuate a bullet into your brain which the least shock disorders, then certainly you will suffer pain, and you will repent quitting a life for a repose you have bought at so dear a price. Yes, I know that there is a secret of luxury and pain in death as well as in life. The only thing is to understand it. You have spoken truly, Maximilian, according to the care we bestow upon it. Death is either a friend who rocks as gently as a nurse, or an enemy who violently drags the soul from the body. Some day, when the world is much older, and when mankind will be masters of all the destructive powers in nature to serve for the general good of humanity, when mankind, as you were just saying, have discovered the secrets of death, then that death will become as sweet and voluptuous as a slumber in the arms of your beloved. And if you wish to die, you would choose this death, Count?" "Yes." Morrel extended his hand. "Now I understand," he said, "why you have brought me here to this desolate spot, in the midst of the ocean, to this subterranean palace. It was because you loved me, was it not, Count? It was because you loved me well enough to give me one of those sweet means of death of which we were speaking, a death without agony, a death which allows me to fade away while pronouncing Valentine's name and pressing your hand. Yes, you have guessed rightly, Morel, said the Count. That is what I intended. Thanks. The idea that tomorrow I shall no longer suffer is sweet to my heart. Do you then regret nothing? No, replied Morel. Not even me? Asked the Count with deep emotion. Morel's clear eye was for the moment clouded. Then it shone with unusual lustre, and a large tear rolled down his cheek. What? Said the Count. Do you still regret anything in the world, and yet die? Oh, I entreat you, exclaimed Morel in a low voice. Do not speak another word, Count. Do not prolong my punishment. The Count fancied that he was yielding, and this belief revived the horrible doubt that had overwhelmed him at the Château d'If. I am endeavouring, he thought, to make this man happy. I look upon this restitution as a weight thrown into the scale to balance the evil I have wrought. Now, supposing I am deceived, supposing this man has not been unhappy enough to merit happiness. Alas, what would become of me who can only atone for evil by doing good? Then he said aloud, Listen, Morel, I see your grief is great, but still you do not like to risk your soul. Morel smiled sadly. Count, he said, I swear to you, my soul is no longer my own. Maximilian, you know I have no relation in the world. I have accustomed myself to regard you as my son. Well, then, to save my son, I will sacrifice my life, nay, even my fortune. What do you mean? I mean that you wish to quit life because you do not understand all the enjoyments which are the fruits of a large fortune. Morel, I possess nearly 100 millions, and I give them to you with such a fortune you can attain every wish. Are you ambitious? Every career is open to you. Overturn the world, change its character, yield to mad ideas, be even criminal, but live. Count, I have your word, said Morel coldly. Then taking out his watch, he added, It is 11:30. Morel, can you intend it in my house, under my very eyes? Then let me go, said Maximilian, or I shall think you did not love me for my own sake, but for yours. And he arose. It is well, said Monte Cristo, whose countenance brightened at these words. You wish. You are inflexible. Yes, as you said, you are indeed wretched, and a miracle alone can cure you. Sit down, Morel, and wait. Morel obeyed. The Count arose, and unlocking a closet with a key suspended from his gold chain, took from it a little silver casket, beautifully carved and chased, the corners of which represented 4 bending figures, similar to the Caryatides, the forms of women, symbols of the angels aspiring to heaven. He placed the casket on the table, then opening it, took out a little golden box, the top of which flew open when touched by a secret spring. This box contained an unctuous substance partly solid, of which it was impossible to discover the colour, owing to the reflection of the polished gold, sapphires, rubies, emeralds which ornamented the box. It was a mixed mass of blue, red, and gold. The Count took out a small quantity of this with a gilt spoon, and offered it to Morel, fixing a long, steadfast glance upon him. It was then observable that the substance was greenish. "This is what you asked for," he said, "and what I promised to give you." "I thank you from the depths of my heart," said the young man, taking the spoon from the hands of Monte Cristo. The Count took another spoon and again dipped it into the golden box. "What are you going to do, my friend?" asked Morel, arresting his hand. "Well, the fact is, Morel, I was thinking that I too am weary of life, and since an opportunity presents itself—" "Stay," said the young man. "You who love and are beloved, you who have faith and hope, oh, do not follow my example. In your case it would be a crime. Adieu, my noble and generous friend. Adieu, I will go and tell Valentine what you have done for me." And slowly, though without any hesitation, only waiting to press the Count's hand fervently, he swallowed the mysterious substance offered by Monte Cristo. Then they were both silent. Ali, mute and attentive, brought the pipes and coffee and disappeared. By degrees the light of the lamps gradually faded in the hands of the marble statues which held them, and the perfumes appeared less powerful to Morel. Seated opposite to him, Monte Cristo watched him in the shadow, and Morel saw nothing but the bright eyes of the Count. An overpowering sadness took possession of the young man. His hands relaxed their hold. The objects in the room gradually lost their form and colour, and his disturbed vision seemed to perceive doors and curtains open in the walls. "Friend," he cried, "I feel that I am dying. Thanks." He made a last effort to extend his hand, but it fell powerless beside him. Then it appeared to him that Monte Cristo smiled, not with the strange and fearful expression which had sometimes revealed to him the secrets of his heart, but with the benevolent kindness of a father for a child. At the same time the Count appeared to increase in stature. His form, nearly double its usual height, stood out in relief against the red tapestry. His black hair was thrown back, and he stood in the attitude of an avenging angel. Morel, overpowered, turned around in the armchair. A delicious torpor permeated every vein. A change of ideas presented themselves to his brain, like a new design on the kaleidoscope. Enervated, prostrate, and breathless, he became unconscious of outward objects. He seemed to be entering that vague delirium preceding death. He wished once again to press the Count's hand, but his own was immovable. He wished to articulate a last farewell, but his tongue lay motionless and heavy in his throat, like a stone at the mouth of a sepulchre. Involuntarily, his languid eyes closed, and still through his eyelashes a well-known form seemed to move amid the obscurity with which he thought himself enveloped. The Count had just opened a door. Immediately a brilliant light from the next room, or rather from the palace adjoining, shone upon the room in which he was gently gliding into his last sleep. Then he saw a woman of marvellous beauty appear on the threshold of the door separating the two rooms. Pale and sweetly smiling, she looked like an angel of mercy conjuring the angel of vengeance. "Is it heaven that opens before me?" thought the dying man. "That angel resembles the one I have lost." Monte Cristo pointed out Morel to the young woman, who advanced towards him with clasped hands and a smile upon her lips. "Valentine! Valentine!" he mentally ejaculated, but his lips uttered no sound, and as though all his strength was centred in that internal emotion, he sighed and closed his eyes. Valentine rushed towards him. His lips again moved. "He is calling you," said the Count. "He to whom you have confided your destiny. He from whom death would have separated you, calls you to him. Happily I vanquished death. Henceforth, Valentine, you will never again be separated on earth, since he has rushed into death to find you. Without me, you would both have died. May God accept my atonement in the preservation of these two existences." Valentine seized the Count's hand, and in her irresistible impulse of joy carried it to her lips. "Oh, thank me again," said the Count. "Tell me till you are weary that I have restored you to happiness. You do not know how much I require this assurance."
"Oh, yes, yes, I thank you with all my heart," said Valentine. "And if you doubt the sincerity of my gratitude, oh, then ask Haydée. Ask my beloved sister Haydée, who ever since our departure from France has caused me to wait patiently for this happy day while talking to me of you."
"You then love Haydée?" asked Monte Cristo with an emotion he in vain endeavoured to dissimulate.
"Oh, yes, with all my soul."
"Well, then, listen, Valentine," said the Count. "I have a favour to ask of you."
"Of me? Oh, am I happy enough for that?"
"Yes, you have called Haydée your sister. Let her become so indeed. Valentine, render her all the gratitude you fancy that you owe to me. Protect her, for—" The Count's voice was thick with emotion.
"Henceforth she will be alone in the world." "Alone in the world?" repeated a voice behind the Count. "And why?"
Monte Cristo turned around. Haydée was standing pale, motionless, looking at the Count with an expression of fearful amazement. "Because tomorrow, Haydée, you will be free. You will then assume your proper position in society, for I will not allow my destiny to overshadow yours. Daughter of a prince, I restore to you the riches and name of your father." Haydée became pale, and lifting her transparent hands to heaven, exclaimed in a voice stifled with tears,
"Then you leave me, my lord?"
"Haydée, Haydée, you are young and beautiful. Forget even my name and be happy."
"It is well," said Haydée. "Your order shall be executed, my lord. I will forget even your name and be happy."
And she stepped back to retire. "Oh, heavens!" exclaimed Valentine, who was supporting the head of Morrel on her shoulder.
"Do you not see how pale she is? Do you not see how she suffers?"
Haydée answered with a heart-rending expression.
"Why should you understand this, my sister? He is my master, and I am his slave. He has the right to notice nothing."
The Count shuddered at the tones of a voice which penetrated the inmost recesses of his heart. His eyes met those of the young girl, and he could not bear their brilliancy. "Oh, heavens!" exclaimed Monte Cristo. "Can my suspicions be correct? Haydée, would it please you not to leave me?"
"I am young," gently replied Haydée. "I love the life you have made so sweet to me, and I should be sorry to die."
"You mean, then, that if I leave you, Haydée—"
"I should die, yes, my lord."
"Do you then love me?"
"Oh, Valentine, he asks me if I love him. Valentine, tell him if you love Maximilian."
The Count felt his heart dilate and throb. He opened his arms, and Haydée, uttering a cry, sprang into them.
"Oh, yes," she cried, "I do love you. I love you as one loves a father, brother, husband. I love you as my life, for you are the best, the noblest of created beings."
"Let it be, then, as you wish, sweet angel. God has sustained me in my struggle with my enemies, and has given me this reward. He will not let me end my triumph in suffering. I wished to punish myself, but he has pardoned me. Love me then, Haydée. Who knows? Perhaps your love will make me forget all that I do not wish to remember."
"What do you mean, my lord?"
I mean that one word from you has enlightened me more than 20 years of slow experience. I have put you in the world, Haidee. Through you I again take hold on life. Through you I shall suffer, through you rejoice." "Do you hear him, Valentine?" exclaimed Haidee. "He says that through me he will suffer, through me who would yield my life for his." The Count withdrew for a moment. "Have I discovered the truth?" he said. "But whether it be for recompense or punishment, I accept my fate. Come, Haidee, come!" And throwing his arm around the young girl's waist, he pressed the hand of Valentine and disappeared. An hour had nearly passed, during which Valentine, breathless and motionless, watched steadfastly over Morrel. At length she felt his heart beat. A faint breath played upon his lips. A slight shudder, announcing the return of life, passed through the young man's frame. At length his eyes opened, but they were at first fixed and expressionless. Then sight returned, and with it feeling and grief. "Oh!" he cried, in an accent of despair, "the Count has deceived me. I am yet living." And extending his hand towards the table, he seized a knife. "Dearest," exclaimed Valentine with her adorable smile, "awake and look at me." Morrel uttered a loud exclamation, and frantic, doubtful, dazzled as though by a celestial vision, he fell upon his knees. The next morning at daybreak, Valentine and Morrel were walking arm in arm on the seashore. Valentine, relating how Monte Cristo had appeared in her room, explained everything, revealed the crime, and finally how he had saved her life by enabling her to simulate death. They had found the door of the grotto opened and gone forth. On the azure dome of heaven still glittered a few remaining stars. Morrel soon perceived a man standing among the rocks, apparently awaiting a sign from them to advance, and pointing him out to Valentine. "Ah, it is Jacopo," she said, "the captain of the yacht," and she beckoned him towards them. "Do you wish to speak to us?" asked Morrel. "I have a letter to give you from the Count." "From the Count?" murmured the two young people. "Yes, read it." Morrel opened the letter and read: "My dear Maximilian, there is a felucca for you at anchor. Jacopo will carry you to Leghorn, where Monsieur Noirtier awaits his granddaughter, whom he wishes to bless before you lead her to the altar. All that is in this grotto, my friend, my house in the Champs-Élysées, and my chateau at Tréport, are the marriage gifts bestowed by Edmond Dantès upon the son of his old master Morrel. Mademoiselle de Villefort will share them with you, for I entreat her to give to the poor the immense fortune reverting to her from her father, now a madman, and her brother, who died last September with his mother. Tell the angel who will watch over your future destiny, Morrel, to pray sometimes for a man who, like Satan, thought himself for an instant equal to God, but who now acknowledges with Christian humility that God alone possesses supreme power and infinite wisdom. Perhaps those prayers may soften the remorse he feels in his heart. As for you, Morrel, this is the secret of my conduct towards you. There is neither happiness nor misery in the world. There is only the comparison of one state with another, nothing more. He who has felt the deepest grief is best able to experience supreme happiness. We must have felt what it is to die, Morrel, that we may appreciate the enjoyments of living. Live, then, and be happy, beloved children of my heart, and never forget that until the day when God shall deign to reveal the future to man, all human wisdom is summed up in these two words: wait and hope. Your friend, Edmond Dante, Count of Monte Cristo. During the perusal of this letter, which informed Valentine for the first time of the madness of her father and the death of her brother, she became pale. A heavy sigh escaped from her bosom, and tears, not the less painful because they were silent, ran down her cheeks. Her happiness cost her very dear. Morrel looked around uneasily. "But," he said, "the Count's generosity is too overwhelming. Valentine will be satisfied with my humble fortune. Where is the Count, friend? Lead me to him." Jacopo pointed towards the horizon. "What do you mean?" asked Valentine. "Where is the Count? Where is Haydée?" "Look," said Jacopo. The eyes of both were fixed upon the spot indicated by the sailor, and on the blue line separating the sky from the Mediterranean Sea they perceived a large white sail. "Gone," said Morrel. "Gone. Adieu, my friend. Adieu, my father." "Gone," murmured Valentine. "Adieu, my sweet Haydée. Adieu, my sister." "Who can say whether we shall ever see them again?" said Morrel, with tearful eyes. "Darling," replied Valentine, "has not the Count just told us that all human wisdom is summed up in two words: wait and hope?" This is the end of chapter 117 and the end of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Recording by David Clark, an Englishman based in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Website www.bgcoffee.net and sometime blog bgdavid.wordpress.com. Thank you for listening to this recording of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas.
Did it end the way you expected? I don't know what I expected, honestly, the first time I read it, but I was surprised by the end. I wasn't honestly surprised by Haydée and the Count. And I know we even had a previous commenter call in and say, "Ew, I see something coming, ew." And I get it. But I also think you can't discount the fact that the two of them have shared something truly transformative and not necessarily happy. And the kind of pain and despair that both of them lived through would make it very hard for them to be comfortable being 100% open with somebody who just didn't get it. And I think you can have empathy for it. I think you can certainly sympathize for what they both went through. But I have a feeling that the visceral nature of being trapped and vilely mistreated for an extensive period of time, especially for Haydée, she was very young when all of the bad stuff went down for her. I can see how it would be soothing to have the affection of somebody who got it, who got you when you are that kind of complicated or complexly broken person. Maybe they're really the only two who can put each other back together again. And of course, it doesn't hurt that Edmond Dantes is really good looking and doesn't look old. And so, for her, he's hot. And for him, she's hot. But they also seem to have shared mutual affection for a lot of similar things. They went to the opera, they traveled, they both speak so many languages. There's a lot that makes it make sense, even though the age difference is kind of creepy to us today. So acknowledging that, making sure that that's said and out of the way, there's some interesting things that the Count says in our final chapter, not surprisingly. And, not just that he's left his lands and his island to Maximilian and Valentine, but the idea that, and again, this goes back to what I was just saying about Haydée and the Count, that, as he puts it, it's only if you've survived the ultimate despair that you have the capacity for feeling ultimate bliss. It's that you have to take the good with bad. But this is, to the nth degree, this is a huge despair and a huge anticipated bliss. And that statement, to me, carries so much of Edmond's redemption in it. Because not only is he saying to Maximilian, I want you to be happy, and I put you through hell on purpose so that you could be happy, truly happy, but also that he's acknowledging that he wants this happiness to happen, and he wants it to happen with Villefort's daughter. Which, I mean, thinking back to how massive and cross-generational the Count's revenge has been, for him to not only allow for Valentine to exist and go on, but to actively participate in making her happy too, that's another sign of his movement back towards a normalcy that he and Aide have said they both need to go find that now. And I'm sure if I were in a cynical mood, I would look at the Count's view of Aide's love for him being a sign that Providence was smiling down on him, that he was being forgiven for, I think, Edward's death in particular is still on his mind. The convenience of being able to look at that moment and say, oh, well, this must mean that God likes me again. That could be viewed as a rather trite and convenient. But I also think that for the readers of the time, it was important for Dumas to allow for that kind of divine forgiveness, the stamp of approval that, look, all of these other people for whom you behaved as the sword of justice, they all had done horrible things, fine, good riddance. But saving these two, especially the daughter of one of the enemies, saving these two, setting them up in a way that will allow them to be truly happy together with Noirtier. And because they are good people, most likely they will go out and do more good things for more people. The kind of catalytic nature of what the Count is doing by putting them together safely and happily, it probably would have been appropriate for his audience at the time to say, well, yes, then this is exactly what I expected. God is happy with this now and he can move on. I think it would have been an appropriate ending for the audience at the time. I wasn't particularly surprised that the Count and Aide took off. I don't think they're very good at goodbyes, real goodbyes, heartfelt goodbyes. They're fine with saying bye-bye to former enemies. Oh, so sorry you're leaving us now, Fernand. But in some way, it felt like at that point, the Count didn't want it to be all about him. And if he stuck around, they'd want him to go to the wedding, and they'd want him to go to Leghorn and see Noirtier, and they'd want him to be there. And he's done. He needs to move on. He's done his good work. And maybe someday he'll come back and see them. But he and Aide have a whole world to explore. And I'm assuming when he leaves all of his land and the island and all of its riches to Morel, he's not leaving penniless. He's got his bank accounts, and he's taken what he needs from the treasure. So I don't think he's, stumbling off into the distance as a beggar. Unlike Danglars. Which leads me to the punishments. Now that we've seen them all, we have them all laid out. We see the punishments and we see the gifts. There's a beautiful kind of dovetailing of the punishment fitting the crime. And I'm going to guess that there will be a lot of messages about that fact and how intricately Dumas crafted the ways into making those things happen. Because that was a good trick, especially when you remember that this book was written over about the same period of time that we've listened to it. We took about as much time as Dumas did. And I know many of you have said there have been times when you've had to go back and re-listen to previous chapters just because you've lost track. And it's true. It's a massive book. And one of the things that I find so interesting is that the author of books, they don't always remember the same amount of detail that the readers do. we reread passages, we look at them, but we're looking at them as a consumer and somebody who's participating in the story. Whereas the author, in creating the story, the next thing that happens is the next thing they're focused on. And they're always focusing on the next thing or the next story or the next chapter. And so the other pieces in some ways kind of get left behind. So what Dumas pulled off was really an extraordinary feat, I think. And I also wanted, before I leave you, to two hilarious voicemails, I do want to extend the two words that the Count leaves us with, because hope has been thrown around an awful lot throughout the last several chapters. And I thought the two words were kind of, as translated, weren't as powerful as what I was expecting. But then I've been sitting with this book for a while. I thought it has more to do. It's not so much wait and hope. It's have patience and be optimistic. Even when it feels like the worst is happening, be patient, be optimistic, which I think is both beautiful and kind of funny because, of course, the Count was extraordinarily patient and always optimistic that he would be able to carry off this act of vengeance. And that seems kind of a strange blessing to leave behind. But when you think about it on a larger scale, Morel had to learn to be patient, even though he had lost his optimism in many ways. And when thinking about it on a smaller scale, not anything as epic as the book that we just read, but when you think about it in a day-to-day world way, that's true for a lot of things. Even marriage, you're going through a bad patch and it seems hopeless. And how is this ever going to resolve itself? Be patient, be optimistic, do what you can to make things better. Part of the optimism is the agency that we're all given. Just like for the Count, part of the optimism that he had was the fact that he knew he was smart enough and at this point rich enough to be able to pull off the revenge that he wanted for both himself and for Ide. So on the small scale, patience and optimism, patience and hope, it's not a bad recipe for being able to make it through what can sometimes be a tough life. So them's my thoughts. And as always, you are more than welcome to agree, disagree, send in your thoughts, whatever you want to say about the book. Share with everyone. You can call 206-350-1642 and let her rip. Or you can go to speakpipe.com/craftlit and leave a message that way, which is how the first message you will hear today from Joy was sent to us. And also why you'll hear it cut off at the very, very end, because it can only last for 3 minutes. If you call the voicemail number, you can talk as long as you want. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Patreon patrons. Thank you, members at craftlit.com. Thank you, app listeners and supporters of all stripes. Thank you for bringing yourself along with us on this journey through a mighty tome of a classic. I will leave you with two rather humorous and thematically linked voicemails, neither of which are appropriate for small children to listen to. So if you're listening in the car, turn it off now and listen later. All right, here we go with first a voicemail from Joy at Crafty Nomad and second from Anne A.T. Blanton. And aside from the Craftlit episode where we listen to what you have to say about the book, the next time you can expect to hear from me will be around Halloween. All right, here we go with the voicemails. Have a great one. Take care of yourselves. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Hi, Heather and everybody else. There is a lot to talk about today. I'm kind of excited to talk about this. I found the part about the very amusing. However, I'm wondering if they're referring to American English. I don't really know, but I have a feeling we say more than the British. But I could be wrong. It brings up a recent occurrence, though. I was recently in a short presentation of scenes at my local playhouse, and during the green room session before the performance, one of our Thai actors was practicing his part, which, excuse me, close your ears if you can't hear this. The phrase was hell. And it sounded more like hell, something like that. And so I proceeded to demonstrate how you said it. And then one of the guys with a deeper voice jumped in. And all of a sudden, 5 of us were all yelling, hell! And he got it right when he did the scene. So that's my amusing story for today. I love the Breguet watch. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. I had to go to the internet to find that. And the Count. Yes, I think he was remorseful about how cruel he had been with his vengeance and how much the repercussions of what he had done had affected other people. So, and I believe in the previous chapters, there was a part where he was saying he wished that he could not make it right, but if God could forgive him. So I think it really was appropriate. He showed mercy, even though he suffered much, much more than Danglars. At least Danglars got a taste of what it could possibly be like if he could be so affected by just a few days suffering, what it might have been like for 14 years. So that's my thing today. I'm so happy that the podcast continues.
Hi, Heather. This is Ann Blanton, A.T. Blanton from Facebook, and Two Step from Ravelry. It's been a while since I called. I was just listening to the passage you were reading about the English language, and well, you may not want to read this on the air, but I saw I was raised in Texas, and Texas can be considered part of the South, although we usually consider it a whole other country. But I saw a comic, and he was saying the word SH is the longest word in the Southern language because you can just say it with as many syllables as you want, and the number of syllables forms the meaning of the word. It can mean anything depending on the length of time it takes you to say. So, this is a good book. Talk to you later. Bye.
A big thanks to all the Craftlit listeners who support the show by being a premium audio member via craftlit.com/premium or via patreon.com/craftlit. Your support for the show is what's kept us going since 2006. If you feel like getting free audio pretty much every week, please consider supporting the show by heading over to patreon.com/craftlit and pledging what you feel the show is worth to you. If you can't support the show that way, consider leaving a review at iTunes or at our facebook.com/craftlit page, or follow @craftlit on Twitter and share the show with your followers too. And remember, if your hands are too busy to pick up a book, at least you can turn one on.